There we go. We're ready to go.
Awesome. All righty. Welcome to today's session on engaging center-based activities with Lumio. So in the chat, for those that just joined, I'm going to put today's agenda. So you'll find in this agenda, there is little links to short videos of how to do some of the things that we'll cover today. Also, at the very bottom, all the resources that I'll discuss at the very end are all linked in the bottom of the agenda, as well as a copy of today's session. So if there's any activities that you like, you'll get your own copy today, as well as my email address if you have any questions that linger after today's session. So before we get going, I'm going to have you all join as a student at first. So I'm just going to pop over here to my classroom management tab, pop this out. Of course, your students, and I know a lot of us are pre-K to 2, probably in this group, maybe there are some older elementary teachers here today and like higher grades. However, a lot of our students are not going to probably log in this way. And that's not the purpose of today's session, but I do want you to interact with some slides. So that's why I'm having you log in. But today's session is really around just how can I maximize that smart board in my room as a station during my centers. So again, this is how us teachers are going to log in today. But remember, today's purpose is all around how I just use my smart board as a center. So you're going to want to join as a guest because we do have teacher accounts. So that teacher account, will help like with the confusion between a student and teacher link. And as you guys join in, I can see that I have 10 students here. So I have about 14 minus Stephanie and I. So that should be about 12. So if you are having any issues, just let me know. Pretty small group today. So if you're having any problems, just let Stephanie or I know in the chat. All right. Perfect, Stacy. So sometimes that happens if you haven't left the class before. So if you just hit the 3 lines on your end at the top left-hand side and say leave class, it will bring you back to where I need you to go. It will kind of help you leave that class and join mine. Let me know if that works for you. Perfect. Alrighty, so before I dive in, I just want to introduce myself. So my name is Michelle Conway Gray. As I told my group earlier, it's my first time saying that. I got married on Friday, so it's like a very new thing for me to say my full name here. For 32 years, my name has been Michelle Conway, but I'm trying to activate my brain to say Michelle Conway Gray. My role is a thank you, everyone. My role is a professional development specialist with Smart. So my job is just to kind of go all over the East Coast, working with teachers just like yourselves of how to use Lumio and your smart boards and all that good stuff. I was a middle school math teacher in Charleston, South Carolina for a few years. That's where I met my now husband. But we moved up closer to where we're both from. I'm from outside of Philadelphia. So for the last 5 years, I was an instructional technology coach in the school district of Philadelphia, doing exactly what all of your instructional coaches do, working with teachers shoulder to shoulder, helping them use Lumio, helping them use the smart board. So making this transition with smart in the summertime was a pretty easy transition. Um, there's my email address. Of course, that's also linked at the bottom of the agenda. So if you have any lingering questions after this, or hey, Michelle, do you have a stepper or a resource or content for this certain content area? Feel free to email me. I'm always, available if you have any questions. So today's learning goal. So we're going to utilize Lumio to create interactive visuals for center directions and management. And we'll also learn how to use that smartboard as a center. So this first portion is all kind of experiencing Lumio from that student perspective, and then we'll kind of jump into that teacher perspective and build some activities for centers. And hopefully your takeaway is that you maybe learn something new about Lumio, or you have a center activity ready to go, or maybe just an idea of what you want to make a center activity. So hopefully you get something out of today's session. So first things first is this is a shouted out activity. So this activity is very similar to, a parking lot activity, but I just want to kind of get some brainstorming with all of you right now. What is important to you as a teacher to have center time run smoothly? So on your end, on your student per side, you should be able to see a little text box and you should be able to write your response and hit submit. And on my end, they'll start populating. So I already have a few responses. I couldn't have picked a more blurry picture for the background now that I'm seeing it in full screen. Oh, of course, Ms. Axe. Let me get it for you. So sorry I missed that comment. As a middle school teacher, every once in a while I would do centers based off of the content. Maybe I was teaching like ratios or rates, and I felt like I could come out with like a lot of good ideas and activities for centers. But I feel like primary teachers, elementary teachers, you guys are the experts of centers. So I'm relying heavily on your experience and knowledge of how you would want uh, centers to run smoothly with a bunch of little ones. Again, I was working with like 13, 14-year-olds. Some of my students were overage, so even 15. So there's a little bit more independence and maturity. So um, your expertise is very valued here. So some of your responses. So let me click on these. So clear directions. I'm sure that also goes along with like clear expectations, routines, and engaging activities. Engagement, focused and independent, fun and engaging. Love that. Hands-on materials, not just a worksheet. Exactly, Amy. Directions, exciting and engagement, independence. This one is a big one, right? We want them to be as independent as possible. So they're not saying, Miss Conway, Miss Conway, Miss Conway, Miss Conway, what are we doing? What are we doing? What are we doing every 5 seconds, right? So this is a really good response. I like that one. So Jennifer, when I was creating the shout it out, I limited it. That's where you create that limit for that student. Yep, Stacy, same thing. Same to Jennifer's question. So it will ask you how many oh, Stacy, thank you. So she's answering Jennifer's question for me. So yes, that is how you manage the shout it out for sure. And you can also manage how it is. So it could be one question. I could have asked 2 questions, and there'll be like 2 different categories. So it's just how you set it up in the back end when you're creating. Beautiful. So most of you kind of put the same answers. I can also move your questions around to, the similar responses. Independence, self-directed, independent, focus, right? So I can move these around and categorize them based off your responses. Awesome. Thank you all for contributing to that. All right, so the first things first is we always want to set up expectations. So you could always do this with your students. So this was just a graphic organizer. So for all of us, I just want us to interact with this a little bit. So what I'm going to do is just convert this page to a whole class whiteboard. So on your end now, you have some tools that you can interact with. On the left-hand side, I just want you to tell me, what does the center look like? Like, what are you seeing in the center? And then what do you hear when you are kind of walking around monitoring, oh my goodness, monitoring the session or the centers? Students are engaged. Quiet discussion about the work. On task. So this is very similar to, I would say, the previous question. So as the teacher on a whole class whiteboard, I can always swipe off editing and kind of bring you guys all back to attention to the teacher. I also can reestablish expectations, especially I've worked with a lot of like second grade teachers, when the students have a little bit more independence when it comes to, the Chromebook use and all that stuff. I have seen them use this type of tool before. Um, but I can swipe off editing access. So a lot of you said it looks like on task, students are engaged. It's organized learning. I love that. I love that because if it's not organized, your students might not also be organized, and it also will create off task, I would assume. Working independently, collaboration, students having fun. Students can have fun. I love that. Collaboration and active learning. Love that. So sounds like you hear student talk, um, working together quietly, quiet discussion. Students may be working together as a team or independently, talking on task. Beautiful. Similar, because this is what today is all about. What does a smartboard center look like to you, and what does it sound like to you? So I am going to convert this again to this time I'm going to do a group workspace just because there's a little bit of a smaller box that you can respond in. So I'm just going to change this to groups of 4. There you all go. Beautiful. Start workspace. And then just tell me if you had to have the smartboard as a center, what does it look like? What does it sound like? And we're just going to keep one of these up so I can see. Taking turns. Love that. Actually, I'm going to lower this and let you guys take about 30 seconds to kind of respond to this. Because this is what we really need to think through today is you may never have used a smartboard before as a center. So you need to think through. This is a part that's like very important. Like, what do you want this to look like in your classroom? And then I think everything else comes after that. What does the activity look like? All that good stuff. But what does it look like when I look at my students and they're working on this smartboard? Because as we all know, when you add something like a smart board, it like kind of builds excitement, and sometimes they just like can't contain that excitement. So we really need to work through these expectations. Maybe even having them practice at the board, is always a good thing. All right, let's see what you all said. So team 1 says it looks like taking turns. I would put no more than like 2 to 3 students at the board. So these smart boards have up to, I think, 20 touch points, the GX board. So um, I would definitely say like that would be insane to have up to like 20 students up there at the board. But I would say having them work in smaller groups is always a good thing. Active learning. So while one's working, the other ones are paying attention. They're not just like flopping all over the carpet and on the floor while the one is working. Sounds like inside voices, quiet discussion. Love those responses. Multiple students, appropriate use, students organizing their participation. Love that response. Looks like cooperation, engagement, and excitement, colors and shapes. Yep. So we'll dive into what type of activities you can do. So I love that. Drag and drop, right? Conversations, pointer sounds. I feel like that's an elementary school term that, let's see, who was this? Mrs. Miles. You're going to have to. I love that little cue pointer sounds. Working in a group, hands on, gentle hands, clean hands. You know, you don't want them to, have snack time and then go up on to the smart board as well. Being responsible, I think teaching them as young as possible. So pre-K, kindergarten, getting the, comfortable with the use of technology and being responsible. It's always nice to get them started early with that. Inside voices, sharing ideas. Now, I don't know how many of you have like an assistant or classroom assistant. Sometimes pre-K, there's always like one maybe in the classroom. Maybe there, so let's talk about looking what it looks like. Maybe that teacher is up at the board with them to kind of monitor the session, that station, that center. Maybe you're up at the smart board if maybe typically maybe you have a small group doing like reading test or whatever in the back as a center. Maybe one time you're up at the board with the students. Or maybe, hey, you got them to a place they're completely working independently. You may need to, set it up each time for them, but we can talk about what that looks like. But I love these answers. This is super important to start thinking through if you've never done it before. Alrighty, awesome responses. So you also can use the smart board also for rotation purposes. So you could have something like this set up and you could always move all the students' names to what station they're at that morning. Maybe you only do one station a day for the math time, and maybe you have this already set up for them. This little box here that is saying an error, this is actually a widget on the board. So you all have GX boards, so you have widgets like a timer. So you could have, maybe you don't even have the smart board right now as a center. Maybe you just have it as the management tool at at the front of the room where they should be, what the timer should be. Um, we have the old boards. Okay, so even if you maybe have just this slide minus the timer. I just wanted to say what that error was. This could be at the front of the board at the very beginning to kind of manage where the kids are. Similarly, I have other examples of this. Maybe you have this set up for them ready to go, so there is no timer on this one. But I do know some have the newer boards, but it doesn't matter. Even if you wanted an older board and use this as a center, Lumio works on any board. Um, so similarly, I could have something like this ready for them, waiting for them when they come in, so they know which stations they're in. And this was very easy to make. I made it using a graphic organizer from Lumio and just added some text, some images, and then I can drag and move their names around. Alrighty, I just wanted to show 3 different examples, and why I put these in here is because you guys are now have your own copy of these, so you could reuse this if you just need to change the names to your students. So I gave 3 different options depending on how you're feeling. Alrighty, so let's get into the meat and potatoes and let's get into what types of board centers you could have. So especially using Lumio activities. So for this first activity, I just want you guys to kind of practice and just play this game, but it's called a rank order. It's a sequencing game. So just play around with it. So this could be an activity that you have your kids work. Maybe you have math stations and maybe you have them work on ordering even numbers, odd numbers, maybe just they're learning 1 through 10, ordering 1 through 10. But all they need to do is drag and drop and it lets them know if they're right or wrong. I'm sure a lot of us already pretty much completed this. So as I was mentioning before, there's 12 different games within Lumio that you can create, and it could be a station for them. There's super sort, there's a matching game. This one is rank order, so they could maybe complete the game, each take turns practicing. Maybe you have multiple games in a row and you teach them um, how to kind of go through the slides. Maybe you have the assistant with them. And then once one student plays, they can always restart the game. Um, what I like about the games, they're super simple to make. So if we have some time, we'll make one of the games. However, I am doing a session in the afternoon all around game-based learning if you wanted to learn how to do these games. Another good activity is scrambled sentences. So you could, this was another simple one. I just used a graphic organizer and added the text. So on the end, this is the image that I want them to create, but I want them to kind of move these around to make the right sentence. So just so you guys could interact with it. Obviously, the students would be up at the board and actually dragging and dropping, but I'm going to just again convert this real quick to an individual handout, just so you could interact with it, see how it works, if you will. Now, for me, I didn't necessarily create this activity, but if I were to create this one, I might change the color of the fragments so they kind of know which ones are connected to each other. So I might make this like red, this one like purple, blue, so they kind of move it around um, and they can see what words go together. I see Regina had done. Beautiful. And you could have you could duplicate this and then add different sentences, different pictures, and then have each group kind of go through. Maybe each group gets like one of the sentence scrambles. So maybe if you have 5 groups, maybe you make like 5 different slides of these examples, and then each group kind of goes through and does one of these centers. Another example again is a very similar concept like kernel sentences. He plays, maybe you have several of these ready for your students that they can kind of drag and drop and work together to complete. So maybe you have, okay, maybe you duplicated this and you have another kernel sentence for them, another kernel sentence, and they kind of go through and complete each one of these. Maybe you even add like another layer to this. Maybe you have them draw the picture of the pig in the mud, or just, just to kind of get them excited and engaged. But again, all I had to do as the teacher, truly, this was a graphic organizer that all I needed them to do is I have my picture here. I wrote these words, added this sentence, added this picture. It took me 2 seconds to make, which again, I'll show you how you can build some of these out when we go into that teacher perspective. Yeah, Amy, so what you may want to do is maybe just have like I'm trying to think of a good way. Since you have a GX board, you are able to kind of, some of you have a GX board. I'm seeing the comments in the chat. Don't worry. If you do have a newer board, you would just be able to drag out that widget and it would kind of just live on top of the slides as the students kind of go through. Other than that, I would suggest maybe you having like a outside time, like somewhere, like one of those ones that like magnet to the wall or whatever, because you're not going to be able to kind of have both going on, um, the screen of the timer and the activities. But it's just kind of up if you don't have a newer board. It's kind of just up to you how if you don't have a newer board, how that would look. Jennifer, is there a way to in the handouts or the whiteboard to turn off certain functions like the writing tool? So you can't necessarily turn off certain functions as the teacher. So for example, like I can't just necessarily turn off the pen tool. So they once you convert it to a handout or a whole class whiteboard or one of them, they get access to all the tools. However, they're always looking for suggestions. So as I'll show you on the teacher perspective where you can add a request a feature if that's something that you're interested in. Another really big ticket item, we have manipulatives that are ready-made. So for example, for this activity, I just want them to create as many words as possible. So again, I'm just going to convert this so you can interact with this, but these are all infinitely clones. So the students can build as many words as they want. So I could say, I want you to build, so let me delete this one real quick. Maybe I also want you to build and words. All right, so what I want to do here is, again, just pop over here. You don't need to do this for your students up at the smartboard, but for today's purposes, I just need to make sure you can interact with it. So have a ball, play around, and I really didn't have to do anything on this other than that top part, create words. That's all I had to add. Everything else was created for me with the built-in manipulatives. And Stephanie, do I have until, just to correct me and my timing here, I have until
I think it's 11. Hold on. Let me just
11:25. Got it,
11.
got it. Yep,
Yes.
beautiful. Dish, beautiful. Cheese, chin, shop. So you can see that the kids can have a lot of fun with this. Grinch, we're almost in that season, huh? So you can see that the students can kind of build away. I can always, have an example like I did, wish ready for them, or I can just have a clean slate for them. So beautiful. So the manipulatives we'll explore a little bit as well. There's a bunch that you can kind of choose from. I think there's up to like 15 manipulatives or something like that. So let's keep exploring so we have more time. This is another one that I would say maybe second grade, third grade, especially when you start getting into story elements is a really fun one. But the students can come up here as a little group and create a story. So all they would really need to do is, okay, pick a setting. So we want it to be maybe space. And then maybe you have them, okay, what is the big problem that's going to happen? Well, in space, there's flying monkeys. And then you have them, okay, in this box and using the pens on the board together as a group, make a 3-sentence story or 4-sentence story. And they can come up with the craziest stories because they have the best imagination. But this is a really fun way of maybe doing like a story element center with the students. Or hey, if you have them doing something individually on their computers, but I know that's a little outside of the purpose of today's session, this is always a really fun one for them to do on their Chromebooks. But I thought this story element one of my colleagues made this, and I thought this was a really cute one to add in here. That's a little outside of, the basic phonics or math or something like that. That this could be a really fun center for the students. And you might be able to make this like a little bit bigger, maybe make these smaller and make this box a little bigger for them if they need more room to write. Or you could always have like a blank slide after this one and they just write the story on a blank slide. All right. Keep it moving. Again, this is another good manipulative that you could have the students do. So you could have them just work with money. I know that's another big one, especially sometimes in SPED classrooms, life skills. Again, this is a manipulative that we have in Lumio that the students can use to work with money. I'm just kind of scrolling through some of these now because I do want to get into like actually building. And then finally, again, this was just a really simple one where the students or the teacher who created this just had a graphic organizer. They just added some images at the bottom. Here is the ideas at the top, the categories, and I just need them to come over here and drag the pictures to the right category. So again, just another simple center. Maybe you're doing science centers. This is another really simple one. Alrighty, so we're going to start building some of these activities together. But before we do, I just want us to kind of recap a little bit of the ideas that we saw. So maybe you're newer to Lumio, or maybe you heard about Lumio and you used to think Lumio was only for this, but now I think this. I used to think this, now I think this. So again, another shout it out. This time there's two different categories. Just want you to kind of put some ideas out here. So my previous session, someone was like, I thought that was such a good response. They were like, I used to think this was only really used for virtual learning because a lot of us are triggered by the virtual world. And that's really, some of us, we had these tools that we used in virtual and then we turned them off. We never used them again the second we walked into a classroom. And now you have a new idea of thinking for it. This was only for whole group lessons. Love that response. It's a great collaborative tool. Some people might say, hey, I had no idea it even like interacted with the smartboard, Lumia. Was lengthy to plan. I love that. So many already done. And we'll explore a little bit today. Yes. So the big goal when I first met the organizers of today's e-coaching day was Michelle, we need you to show how you can be low prep, no prep, pretty much with Lumio. And there are some ideas in there that we're going to explore today. I'm really happy by this response. All right. So I feel like sometimes when my pre-K teachers in the past have sat through trainings, a lot of it's very independent, right? Like it's kind of based for like I don't even I'm this is speaking only from experience. Like there's expectations around like it being like very independent, right? So it's like for example, if I had you sit through this whole session, not about center based, but like the kids coming in on their Chromebooks and this and that and that. And this is where pre-K teachers are sometimes like, oh my God, like that's a lot. But kind of reshaping it to be just a center with very simple pictures and very simple the kernel one that was really simple, or that the drag and drop the pictures into the right categories. You could have the categories be like green, yellow, blue, and like move the objects into green, into yellow, into blue. Really just helps encourage my pre-K teachers to use tools like Lumio. So I love that response. Was just for individual learning. So there it is, beautiful. But now we can use it for center base. So I love these responses. Thank you all. So now let's kind of switch gears. We have about 20 minutes to switch gears into the teacher perspective. A lot more time. I'm giving myself this session that I did the last one to let people kind of build and explore. But first things first is you have to leave my class so you can become a teacher now. Um, in the 3 lines at the very top, you're just going to click on that and say leave class. And from there, I just need you to open up a new tab and open up Google Drive. As the teacher, I also could remove you all, which is always an easier way. My advice, a lot of you are finding it on your own. Alrighty, so I'm going to model it exactly as well. So let me end this lesson real quick. And I'm going to hop into my Google Drive. Alrighty, so from here, you're going to open up Lumio. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to New, More, Lumio. So one more time, up at the left-hand side, New, More, and right below More is Lumio, somewhere along your list. Our apps might look a little different, but somewhere on that list is Lumio. And it will pop you out to the Lumio tab. Now, mine went right to my homepage because remember, 2 seconds ago I was signed in. However, it might ask you to sign in. It might prompt you, are you a teacher? Teacher sign in with Google, because we're a Google district. Agree to terms or whatever. And then this should be the end goal is your homepage. If you get to your homepage, can you just say homepage in the chat or put your class ID in the chat? Just so I know we're all on the same page. If it brings you back to like the join class page or whatever, that student join class page, at the very bottom, there's like small writing that says, are you a teacher? Let me see if I can kind of show that. If it brings you back to this page, just look for the small writing that says, are you a teacher? So far, so good. Let me know if you're having any problems. Oh, I wasn't scrolling down. I was like, where is everyone? There they are. Homepage, homepage, homepage. Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you, Mrs. Buck. All right, so I'm going to keep it moving just because we only have a certain amount of time. But I'm keeping my eye on the chat if anyone's having any issues. But let's take a look at your homepage a little bit. So first things first is your name. If it says your first and last name, that is exactly what your students will see. Excuse me, if you come over to edit class here on the right-hand side, you can rename your class. So I work with adults. I don't care that you guys know my name, so I keep mine Michelle Common. But you might want to change it to Miss, Mrs., Mr., whatever you may choose. You can also rename the class. Also, what I want you to do, just because of it being a bigger tool for elementary, is the immersive reader. We just, obviously, since this was like a more center-based activity or session. We don't really review all the tools that is available in Lumio, but immersive reader is a big one. So just make sure you have this swiped on. This way it's available for your students during live lessons when they're logged in with their Chromebooks. What I also want to point out, if you click on immersive reader, each one of the tools as you explore will have like a little graduation cap. If you're like, hey, I would like to learn a little bit more about immersive reader, um, if you click on this little graduation cap, it shows you a quick little video of how it works, what it does. So that's nice little built-in help tool, if you will. All right, so in the middle, you have my library. These are all my own personal lessons I've created over time. But you also have Lumio library. So a lot of us may not want to recreate the wheel every single time, but if you come into Lumio library, there's a bunch of ready-made resources for you. So at the top, you're always going to find featured activities or lessons. You have some good stuff on connections that matter, emotional literacy. These are all very much collections. Managing your classroom, there's some really cute ones for like attendance purposes, calendar, morning meeting stuff. So definitely take some time diving into that one. Here are some manipulatives you can choose from. Uh, there's like 12 like standard manipulatives that are built into when you're building Lumio. These are taking it like one step further. So for example, this 10 frames one's a big popular one. It's not necessarily in the 10 or so manipulatives that are built in when you're building. You would have to save this to your Lumio library and then it would be available for you. But if you scroll down, there's like a million different things that you kind of can get lost exploring. There's stuff on fractions and reading and writing. There's some really good ones for sight words and phonics that I think would be really great centers. So definitely take some time diving into there. They've partnered with Epic. They've also partnered with ReadWorks. If there are any like art and music teachers in here, sometimes that is a category in life that kind of they struggle to find some really great stuff for them. And I think Lumio does a really nice job of incorporating stuff for the arts. And then there's some other stuff, graphic organizers, brain breaks, just so much stuff that you can kind of come back in here and dive into. Um, all right, so that's your Lumio library. I just wanted to point it out because I think we're always looking for places where we can kind of grab some other ideas outside of what we already have or want to do. So let's go back into my library. And what we're going to do is we're going to actually say new. Right under your name, there's new. Okay, so from here, hit new. And this window is going to appear. It's just asking you, how do you want to start this activity? How do you want to start it? Where do you want to start? So you'll see here, I can import things. So I can import from my desktop. I can import from my Google Drive. So if you have something kind of already created, maybe a slide or something, you can always import. I can bring in a YouTube. But just for the sake of today's purposes, oh, yep, there's manipulatives. We're going to start with a game. So I'm just going to open up a game. And you can see here, there's a bunch of different games that you can choose from. There's that rank order that we all did earlier with the sequencing. There's super sort. Match 'em up is another big one people do. But you'll see there's all different ones in here. Again, there's the graduation caps if you ever want to see how it works. But for today, I'm just going to choose that rank order one real quick. And all you need to do is just kind of build out the template, which is pretty simple. So I'm just going to have my students kind of order the numbers 1 through 10. So I'm just going to quickly go 1 through 10. Maybe I'm working pre-K or kindergarten. And then I'm going to stop at 10. Yeah, it will prompt you like you're out of pairs or you're out of responses. Typically, most games only give you 10 responses. And then it's going to ask you for rank order, like how you want this checked. Because I'm working with younger, I'm not going to say when prompted. What that means is it's going to make them go through all of the questions first and then you ask you check your answers. I want them to know instantly when they're wrong. It will shoot back out when they're wrong. So I'm going to keep it as instantly. And then I just need to say like the labels, if you will. And I'm sure there's a better one for pre-K, but my brain is not working apparently. So I'm just going to say least to greatest. And I'll pause here if people are practicing or coming out with their own idea. So each game that you choose, this is a very similar format. If it was super sort, it would just be two category kind of columns here, and you just kind of make the answer key. If it was match them up, you would just match up the pairs. You're kind of building that answer key to start. Once you finish the game or the answer key, if you will, you just hit next. And then they give you some really cute themes for primary. Pretty much the kids buy into any type of theme. But they did include some basic colored themes for the older grades, like the simple. But the students kind of love all of them, the little ones. So I'm just going to choose this rock concert one and hit finish. And now the game is done. It's that simple to make games for the most part. Now, if you're doing like monster quiz or game show or one of those games, it takes a little longer because you have to like write out the questions and write out the answers. But these little simple rank order games, super simple. And I'm just going to call this 1 through 10 so I remember what it was. Similarly, I cannot speak today. If I know I'm going to have 5 groups playing this game, actually, you know what? We'll do it for another activity. The game, you can pretty much say like restart and the kids would restart. So I wouldn't probably duplicate the game. So we'll make another idea in just a second and then I'll show you how to duplicate. But pretty much that game is done. I can preview it and now that game's ready to be played and the kids can order it when they are up at the smart board. Doesn't look like there's any questions in terms of the games, but they're pretty. From if I was a beginner, of course I've been in Lumio now for almost 6 years. I still believe the game is probably the easiest place to start when you're a new person trying to build out some of these activities. Alrighty, so let's go back down to that blue plus sign here at the bottom. And let's pull out one of those manipulatives. So right here in that green box is manipulatives. So Mrs. Miles, so they don't even need to log in as a student. It's just up there as the teacher and they just walk up and start playing. It's just going to say like play on the board, if you will, or like start model activity. They just need to hit that button and it would start the game for them. They don't necessarily have to log in like you are today. You would just log into the Lumia lesson on the browser on the board or and just play the game. Now, if you're an older smartboard, you would just have your computer connected and they just would hit start.
Is there some games that require student devices?
Yes, great question, Ms. Miles. So I would, and when you go to pick the game, and I'm actually going to show you real quick, it will show you, it says teacher led. So that means they need to be on their device. So for example, Monster Quiz, the team quiz game, everything else is could be individual on the smartboard. Great question. Thank you for asking that one. All right, so let's go down to manipulatives here. So you'll see there's a bunch of different manipulatives, again, that you can choose from. I really like the making words one. It's always a great place to start. I also really like the where is it? The number line one is always a good one for math for little ones. Same thing. Sorting shapes, especially if they're learning how to sort different shapes. That's always a good one. But let's go with the making words one just for today. Again, you can choose whatever one you're working on. Here's the clock one, which is always a big one. Here is make sure you choose the United States coin one. Lumio or Smart is an international company, so you'll see some like euros gets thrown in there every once in a while, but just make sure you're choosing US coin-based activity. But here, making words, again, everything's ready for me. All I need to do is add those words at the top. So here are my tools as a teacher, very simple. That's what I like about it. I just need to choose that A button, which means text. And then just kind of select anywhere in this box where I want to add the text and then right here. And I'm just going to say create as many and words as possible. Obviously, I want to highlight it and make it a little bigger so my kids can see it. 60 might be too big, but we'll just drag out and see how that works. That works. I'll just make it a little smaller. And then double click, click, make it a little bigger. Beautiful. And then I'm just going to lock this just in case like the kids try and move it. I'm just going to lock it. So once I select this button or this text box, there's a little down arrow and I can lock it in place. So we have about 3 or 4 minutes because I know we still have to like do a survey and all that good stuff. So I just want to show a couple more tools. So again, maybe I have 3 learning groups that are going to go through this center that day. Remember, I was going to do it for the game, but I do want to show it for this manipulative because this is actually a better example to do it for. Here in this 3 dots in each slide, I can duplicate it. So I can say duplicate. Now this game is duplicated 3 times. So the students would just, you might just have to hit like the down button and then the students would be able to contribute to as a little group in the next slide. So tell me a little bit about more about your data privacy that you are inquiring about. Is that for Stephanie's link? Oh, got you. Understand what you're saying. Got you. All right. So finally, let's just add one more activity. So let's do a graphic organizer. So this was the manipulatives. The purple is graphic organizer. Again, there's all these different graphic organizers you can choose from, but I'm just going to choose this quick 3-column one real quick. Again, I'm just going to add some text. So this is going to be blue. This is going to be purple. And this is going to be green. Maybe I lock them all. I might make the graphic organizer a little smaller, but again, because of time's sake, I'm not going to be perfect here. Yeah, there we go. Beautiful. Just make it a little smaller. I would fix the words, I would make it aesthetically look right. But just for time's sake, there's also now we've used that text tool. here is an image icon. So in the image icon, so this is my shapes and lines. There's also a picture feature. So here may be where I grab different pictures of blueberries. Make it a little smaller. Maybe I grab, what's purple? Grapes. I feel like I used grapes. Yeah. Is Barney still relevant? Is he coming back? I heard they are bringing him back. Green. Grass. So maybe I bring out different images that they can practice with and sort. And then this could now be a center, right? So then the kids can come up to the board and they can practice sorting different shapes and color or different colors, because maybe that's what they're working on. I can always bring in a shape. So maybe I bring in a shape and I just change the color to blue. And now that's one of the options, right? So this is just another example where I just kind of use the graphic organizer and just added text and some images to complete the activity. Again, I could duplicate this as many times as I need, so each group has their own ready to go. But just like different ways that you can use these ready-made resources within Lumio to kind of build quick little centers for your students. All right.
All right. Well, Michelle, thank you so much. And the resources, did you want to post those again for them so they
Yes.
would?
I'm going to
Okay.
wrap up right now. Just
Okay.
make sure that you title um, your lesson up here just so you remember what it is, and you just hit finish editing. It's always saving in the back end in Google Drive under your Lumio folder. But then when you're ready to go, you just hit start, and that's how your students can interact with those activities. I'm going to drop that agenda link one more time. Just know there is a 3 dots option here. You can always share this out. So if me and Miss Sachs are colleagues and I'm like, hey, I just made these really great centers, maybe you want to make use them, I can copy this and email this to Miss Sachs. Sachs, I meant. You also have a student access link that you could always put this in Google Classroom, and the students can interact with these at their own pace on their devices. And then let me just drop this one more time in the chat. Some things that might be super helpful for folks. We actually have, let me just finish up these resources at the end here. We have an ambassador program. This is a way that you can connect with us, learn new things, find out some sneak peeks that are coming out. You can also gain access to becoming a certified trainer where you can get paid to do sessions on Lumio and Smart. You also, we have these learning academies. They just came out a couple of weeks ago, so you can learn at your own pace. So there is so much I wasn't able to cover today, just with a 55-minute session, and like it being a really strategic session with it being around centers. You can always go through these academies and learn at your own pace, and pretty much learn it from inside out. Learn it inside out. And then obviously you have my email. We're always looking for feedback, and all that information is here at the bottom of the agenda. So thank you all for joining. Hopefully you kind of got some new ideas of how you can use your smartboard as a center. And yeah, and Steph, you can finish the recording and I'll hang out and answer any questions.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. My quick question was easy.
Okay.
When I open it up, not when I'm in the teacher mode, when I'm in the regular mode, it says welcome, Ms. Axe, select to join a class. I can't ever get rid of any of the classes that are up there that I've joined in the past.
These. Yeah, so right now you cannot get rid of them.